Hey guys,
Hey
welcome
guys.
to 10th episode.
Yeah,
my
10th
God,
episode.
10. That's quite wholesome.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a
Okay.
nice number.
Yeah,
Yeah, today we've got a special guest. Please, want to introduce your guest?
this is Bedi, and he's gonna tell us about his life in this lovely
Yeah.
little view. Would you like to introduce yourself better than I just did?
Okay. Briefly, I'm Jay. I'm 21. I'm half English, half Indian. But when I was very young, like around 7, 8, my dad decided to move to Cyprus. And yeah, there's obviously a lot more to it. But what do you want to know?
Yeah, tell us about when you moved. What Jeremy, what were you gonna say?
I was going to say we've got a full hour to find out all the bits about your life, so I'm sure we'll get into it more and more. But yeah, Louise, continue asking about a little bit more about that.
Yeah, tell us why you moved and how you found like moving, like when you first moved there.
So that's a good question. Why we moved? We were in Manchester, and then we moved to Paphos, Cyprus. My parents, I didn't know why we moved for a long time. I just thought like it was like a business decision, and as it was a business decision. But I think that my parents just like saw it as an opportunity as well to like, lead a different life. Go somewhere different than being in Manchester. My parents have been in England their whole lives pretty much. My mom had been in Manchester for her whole life, and I guess they wanted to change, and yeah, we moved.
Yeah, very cool. And we sort of did something similar for a lot less time.
Yeah,
Went to Ghana for a year and a half.
No,
I guess the only reason we came back is because it just didn't work out. Like it was kind of a business decision. My dad was going to sell what he does here in terms of like the restaurants here, whatever, and move over there, and it didn't happen that way. So yeah, I think it is a great thing when people decide to move to a different country. How have you? I guess you're in the UK quite a bit then. So how do you find the difference between the two places?
Oof, man, like I don't even know where to begin with that. Like Cyprus is a lot different to the UK. I mean, in literally every aspect, like I could dissect loads of different aspects, but the best way for me to describe it in like a couple of words would be if you took like the UK, you made it really sunny, like a tropical island, and then like
Right.
socially brought it back like 30 years.
Right.
That's probably a decent explanation of Cyprus. Also, I grew up in Paphos, which is like a very small town in Cyprus, which is already a small country. So
fair enough. Okay. So sort of like, where's that place in Spain that everyone goes? Not Ibiza.
Benidorm, is that what you're gonna say?
Like Benidorm-ish.
don't say that to another person that comes from Paphos. It's not like that.
You've not said I have.
Benidorm, but like I think
Yeah.
Ayanapa is like probably a good comparison with Benidorm. But like Paphos is like it's like a small town next to the coast. There's mountains as well if you go. It's very small. Like
yeah,
I can't explain it to someone that hasn't been.
Fair enough.
But
yeah, we just have to go there then. We'll have to see for ourselves hopefully.
Idyllic there, like so different to living in the city.
Yeah. Well, Louise, you went to Ayanapa, right?
Yeah. But like, what was I doing there? Clubbing?
Yeah, probably only out at night to be fair. Unconscious during the day.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, when we
So
went to
Ayanapa is quite similar, like to Paphos in like the way it looks.
Yeah, okay.
But obviously, like, people only really go there for the club life, and
sure,
it's a lot different. Also, like there's a big history between like Cypriots and British people in multiple ways. So like politically, the British were involved in like the Turkish and Cypriot different like the problems they had between each other, and then also like the interpretation that I believe a lot of Cypriots gather from British people is the people that go there on holiday to the places like Ayanapa, and a lot of times, drunken Brits don't give off the best impression in these countries. There's a lot of like wrong opinions, I'd say, about British people in general in Cyprus because of that. But I understand obviously why they have those opinions.
Yeah, it sounds like a similar story to Ibiza. When we were there, we were speaking to some people, and on the off season, especially further up north, it's a lot more like you were describing, like kind of calm and idyllic. But obviously, you get this influx of English people in the summer partying and stuff like that, and they definitely get those interpretations. So, like for you personally, then coming, I mean, you sound British to me. Obviously, your parents are probably even more so sound British. So, I guess you being in that system, do you get those stereotypes onto you, or is it because you're so different to like maybe that stereotype in terms of you're intelligent and everything else? I'm sure they got to know you over the years. Do you not get that? What
I mean,
how does
like,
it work for you?
so growing up, right? Initially, as soon as people, so growing up, a lot of people could mistake me for Cypriot,
Right.
without hearing a word from my mouth. And
Sure.
then once I speak, they know I'm English. So their predetermined judgment a lot of the time is what I just was talking about, like, and also because the English people that live here often go to like an international school, which is like you pay to go there. So they see the English people as like higher class or something, and their predetermined like judgment is always that like you're a spoiled Englishman, or like not always, but a lot of the time it is like that.
Yeah, fair enough. So is your school one of those international schools, or did you go?
Say like, what's it? The international school life.
Yeah, I went to an international school.
Fair enough. Okay, I suppose it's kind of rich because I was going to say it's kind of rich because obviously your peers, other people in your school, would be people at that same school. But I understand that, for example, unis here, there's a bit of a conception that obviously international students, so obviously there's lots of Chinese students, etc. I think part of that's because they literally do pay more to come to the unis, but they're still, even in being in the same spaces, like they're richer. So I guess maybe they have that kind of kind of thing. Makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
Also, that like just to make it clear, there's a big difference between an international school in like Singapore or a place like that than a international school in Cyprus. Like, obviously, like I don't have a problem saying like I'm a middle class guy, come from a middle class family, but there's not really like, you have your few people that are like really wealthy, but
sure,
I feel like in other international schools, like everyone is like like that. Whereas in my school, you had I have friends that were also English or English Cypriots that were lower income families that were still paying to go to school, because the Cypriot education isn't. I mean, I don't know a lot about it in detail, but I do know that it's not very good, and compared to like the British education, especially in terms of like globally. So yeah, it's when you talk about international students, there can be like a preconceived notion that like they're a certain way. Whereas I think there is a big difference between Paphos and Cyprus international schools than like Thailand or Singapore or wherever.
Sure, fair enough. And I guess the way it translates to potentially coming to uni here, you'd want to have those kind of A levels, GCSE background, which you get, I guess, in international school.
Yeah.
Louise was telling me a little bit about your journey since you've done that. So I don't know if Louise wants to ask you a bit more about that and put us all in.
Experience, and like obviously you left Surrey uni and now you've gone to another uni. So tell us a bit about that. How that's been.
Like, so when I first went to university, I'd say I didn't know myself very well. Being in Cyprus, you kind of put in like in a box, I'd say. Like, I'm a very creative minded person, and like my joy from life comes from that. And growing up, I was suppressed in that way from being in Cyprus, I'd say, caring what other people thought about me. And then also, like, if anyone, I'm also half Indian, and like anyone that's Indian or Asian know like you're pushed in a certain direction. So that also played a part in it. And so when I went to the UK, I decided to study economics and politics, which I'm interested in still to this day. But I quickly realized that like the career paths in those subjects were not for me at all, and spending my days doing that, it wasn't fulfilling. So eventually I got to the point where I decided to leave. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do next, but I knew that I wanted to do something creative. And I've been very closeted about doing music for my whole childhood. Basically, like I would be in the back of class, like jotting down rhymes. It's very cliche for anyone who likes hip hop, but like that's like what I was doing. And yeah, eventually I just, as I grew, so when I got there, I started finding myself more, and I started thinking, like, started realizing that am I allowed to swear on this, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone always asks that.
Question when they come on.
Yeah.
I started to realize that, like, I'm just not being myself for bullshit reasons. And so eventually, like I said, I dropped out. I started working while I was figuring out what I wanted to do next. And then I decided I'd go back to university and do a marketing course, because I do have conflicting views on university. But at the end of the day, regardless of my views, I'm aware that having a degree is beneficial. So I decided to do that, just to get my degree and do it in a discipline that's going to help me grow in whatever else I wanted to do. Because I feel like I wasn't 100% sure like what I wanted to pursue, but I knew that marketing will help me in anything that I wanted to do. So that's what made me choose that as my degree. And then while I was working as well, I started, like, obviously I was, I've been rapping and singing and writing lyrics for a while. I started thinking about releasing music and all these things. Quickly realized that in order to do that, I need to have a producer. From there, I look at how expensive it is per song, and I just thought, why not learn myself? So started learning with myself, and I've always wanted to learn, but production, there's barriers to entry in terms of like how expensive it is to start. And so I got my Mac laptop eventually, and then started learning how to produce. And from there, I just fell in love with it. Like during quarantine, like I started learning probably a year ago, in like not today, but like March last year.
Lockdown.
God, a year ago today, it was actually lockdown. Like it's actually an anniversary today. Like that is fucked.
Yeah, mad. But anyway, I was doing that, and I just fell in love with the production side of everything. So like now, that's like my head is like 100% focused on that and doing my degree at the same time.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, and Louisa played me a song really good. I thought, I even asked her, I said,
yeah, I bugged you.
I think I said to her, whose song is it? As in taking it to mean that you'd produced it for someone else. Yeah. She said, obviously you've done the lyrics and the rapping and the producing, all of it in one. So yeah, really good, really professional. And it will make a feature some point in this upload as well, so people can listen to you. And yeah, people can find your page and follow you from now on. But yeah, really impressive. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, that's really interesting. We've got a cousin actually. So as I said, we lived in Ghana as well, in terms of being abroad, and he was there, and he, similar to you, basically, like that kind of African background is very much, very like linear is the word we like to use. But he always loved to do music. But in Ghana there wasn't the opportunities, so came here for sixth form, so he'd eventually be able to go to uni here. And then he started, like, he had a little notepad that you were saying, writing down songs and everything else. He got sort of with a band, basically. He was doing gigs. He was getting pretty close to establishing himself, but like the industry was just a bit mad in the sense of you can do all of that, have all the talent, but like you say, there's certain barriers to entry in terms of how you're funding this. There's no guarantees. And then eventually he went back to uni and he did computer science, and he also happened to fall in love with that. So I guess it must be so hard to know which way it's putting you in terms of what you're doing and what your passions are. But yeah, definitely really interesting.
When we went round to New Year's, I was like thinking about it, and I thought, like, do you have time to do music now? Like, you literally love to produce music. You did your own gigs. Like, what are you doing now that you're 30? God, old, and have a fiance to kind of take care of and stuff like that.
Yeah. I guess in his case, he fell in love with what he's doing now, whereas you, marketing would be a means to an end, in a sense of it would obviously marketing is integral in music production, so you could tie the two things together. It wouldn't necessarily have to be an either or situation.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I mean, would you like to be the artist and that's the only thing that you're driven on, or would you like to produce a label? I mean, could you have a big picture that could be one thing or another, or it's definitely you love to be the artist?
Well, in my mind, the possibilities are endless, but I have to reach a certain like. I'm just focused on like my main goal right now, which is being able to make a living through what I'm doing, which is, it's pretty hard to achieve, I'd say, but I do believe it's a goal that's achievable.
Yeah.
So my first goal is to accomplish that, and have a comfortable living for myself, and also a living that has room to grow more, because also, a lot of jobs nowadays you're capped at what you earn, whereas if you can, I do have a bit of an entrepreneurial side to me as well, and if you can combine that side with music, then in terms of like earning enough money for me and my eventually family to live comfortably, I believe that like it's actually a better thing to pursue what I'm pursuing than what I would have done, especially because like, I mean, I don't know what I would have done before, but
yeah.
Sorry, I didn't answer your question properly.
It's all right.
But your idea of a label is something that always like resonated with me. So that would be like amazing to be able to do that. But at the same time, like I'm very passionate about like the flaws in the industry, the flaws in the music industry, and like so I'm independent, and I do the marketing myself, the recording, mixing, mastering, writing, everything. And as time goes on, I'd like to like let go of doing some of those things, not because I don't enjoy it, but because I know that like I'm not the best at everything. Like I can't be. There's going to be other people that like can write better songs than me, or can sing better, or whatever. And like I want to collaborate more to make better music and stuff like that. But being independent I think it's the way to go. I think that labels like need to die basically, because especially nowadays, like people are more aware of other people being screwed over, right? But it's so easy to just sign your publishing rights away, and like then the label owns you, and they don't just own your publishing rights; they own like your creative direction. So like basically, the point you're doing in the first place is taken. Yeah. So I like the idea of the label, but traditionally how labels are ran, I'm completely opposed.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that's exactly what our cousin said. He kind of said actually that labels are dying naturally anyway, just because it's so easy for people like you yourself, obviously within a year have picked up these different facets of what you need anyway. So easy for people to do these different parts. They're becoming less and less relevant. And I think stories like was it Little Mix or someone, one of the British artists?
Taylor
Swift.
Didn't she go like she got really mad and then just went on a like massive rant about how they fucked her over, and then she re-recorded her first album and like released it as like the way that she wanted it to be released?
Maybe I guess
there's so many stories. Kesha's was quite fucked as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think like you were saying, with not only do they own, like sometimes it's crazy percentages. I think Little Mix was very small, but they also exactly control your creative direction and everything else, which if that takes passion out of it for you, what's the point? I think because they're kind of behind a wall, it's not like this one person that you can sort of hold to account, not only for the public but to the artist to a degree as well. Probably it's harder to look into it, but I think the more stories come out like this, the more people are just going to make the decision from the beginning before they sign up to anything to not do that. So hopefully that will be where it goes quickly.
Yeah, I think people need to like be proud of like being independent as well, because signing to a label is a quick fix. It's a quick fix to get to where you want to be, but in the long run, it also depends what you're asking, because loads of artists might sign for a label because they want the fame and they want all these things that come with it, but you could take an independent route and just focus on yourself and developing like a small fan base. And like I feel like that's way more appealing for me, and it should be more appealing generally. But yeah, I mean, yeah, that's all I have to say, really.
So let's say, so you're what, your first or second year in your course right now?
I'm actually first year right now.
First year, yeah. Okay, so let's say you're a year after graduating, music's going really well, you're doing gigs, whatever it is that you would see as kind of as really well. But you're working alongside it, and then whatever the biggest label is for you, the dream label, the dream people to collaborate with, offer you a deal, but you've got to be with them to the end of your career. Yeah, big deal.
Situation for
Basically, yeah, big deal. Would you sign that, meaning that they have ownership over all the things we've discussed, creative direction and how everything basically will go, but it's a big deal. It's been a year since, well, I guess that'll be 3 more years from now. You haven't quite signed, but you know it's good enough. What would you do at that point? And obviously that's quite a strict example, but in a way kind of reflects some realities, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, like if anyone who's an artist, I'm not a big artist at all, right? But if anybody that's an artist is listening to this right now, if any label wants you, then you're already good enough, right? Then don't go with them, right? If any label is trying to get you, it's because like you can do it without them. And so to answer your question, no.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
I wouldn't go. I mean, as soon as you said like that they have my publishing rights, it's a no. Because also like,
yeah,
this is another big thing. Like in the industry, you get loads and loads of big artists dying, and like, I'm not making any accusations here, but
yeah,
it's like these big artists die, then they don't own their publishing rights. The labels do. They die, and then they get even more sales, and they become a lot of the time they become big artists after their death, not actually while they're alive. And that I do feel like there's something going on there. And if independent artists own their publishing rights, you could literally have one song that gets 1 million, that blows up, right? It gets 1 million in a month, let's say, and like people know it, and they continue to play it forever and ever. That one song is generating revenue forever. So if I die, that song is providing for my family when I'm not even here. So like, that's another like big thing and a big incentive for me, I think.
Yeah, definitely it makes a lot of sense.
Jeremy, what we were saying the other day about if someone wanted to like get this podcast, will we continue to do it or will we go?
Yeah, no, it's very similar to that. That's a good example, Louise. So yeah, we kind of do this. I think if you were to say this could be our career one day, amazing. Yeah, definitely we would do that. And I think what were we saying? I was going to drop out of uni because Louise is passionate about politics and is actually quite unique in her situation that she knows what she wants to do directly afterwards. If you have to drop out of your course and they gave you a podcast, would you do it? And she sort of said, yes, definitely. It's a tough one. It's a different thing, but I could definitely see how it'll be similar, especially in terms of what you can have on. So, for example, if they say we want a podcast on these topics, you can't swear, you've got to be politically correct, you've got to do X, Y, and Z.
Oh, fucked.
I mean, you're still having interesting conversations for a living, but it's not the kind of conversations you want to be having. So, yeah, I would agree with you in that sense. If it was that as well. I look at Joe Rogan. I mean, biggest podcast out there, and he literally speaks about what he wants to speak about, invites who he wants to invite. He can have anyone on every day, and 50% of the people are his mates or UFC fighters.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's what's authentic about it. So I'm sure the same thing reflects on music. What I want to get your opinion on is my little brother, his birthday was yesterday, so we were hanging out, and he was playing me like his music, and I was just thinking, I'm not a rap connoisseur, right? But it's just so shit nowadays. It's so the mainstream rap. So it's just same noise. If you can even make out what they're saying, it's the same lyrics about girls in like Molly, blah 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 blah. So like be in the market, because that's literally like 70% of the stuff right now. Would you like? How do you see yourself that basically? Would you be quite like very different, like a conscious rapper? Yeah. Where do you see yourself fitting into that? Would you say that you're very different to anything that's out there, or would like to be very different to anything that's out there, or would you just sort of rediscover what that was supposed to be, but with more of a voice, more lyrics?
Yeah.
How do you basically see yourself in the market, basically?
Okay, like in terms of the market you were talking about, I personally don't see that as hip hop. I don't like that's pop. That's like popular music. Yeah,
Yeah.
like that is like influenced by hip hop, but it's just like hip hop that's mainstream. It's basically pop, like to me at least. So I don't fit in that market at all, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like I'm also in terms of where I do fit, I'm not naive in terms of knowing that like I still have a lot to grow as an artist. So there's that to take into consideration. But in terms of the direction I want to go, like I'm still really passionate about politics. I still have like this hunger in order to like, you know, do something good for the world to give. And to me, what I want to do with my music is also use it as like a political tool, if possible, and to spread a message and to encourage positive activism, um, as well as talking about other aspects of life. Like other things are important to me. The topics are endless. I'm not gonna lie, but I want to, like hip hop started as protest music, and it's important to me to show respect to its heritage and its roots, and like that's why I don't see all these rapping about like girls and guns and drugs and whatever. It's not, it's not hip hop to me. It's not. It's just to hip hop to me.
Yeah.
So nothing to do with that, and more in the like conscious rapper kind of lane, I would say.
Cool. Yeah, because Louise, first I pronounced his name the other day. What was it? I always pronounce it wrong. Akala? Yeah.
Yeah.
Carla,
Yeah. So
He's
he's actually sick. I love hearing him speak, and so I thought, why have I not actually listened to him rap that much yet? Like actually just listen to him consistently. And he's basically exactly what you're saying. I mean, I'm sure you probably heard him speak and probably heard his music as well. Yeah, it's pretty much just that. I mean, he has his own like stylistic things that he likes. He obviously loves Shakespeare, and he's very into his sort of like African activism and understanding Africa and the history behind that. And he has certain things that are his things. But yeah, very much he's saying what you're saying, which is you have a voice, you have a platform. There's a reason why it can't be good rap, but also do that. But I'm thinking like he's quite popular. Actually, he's probably more so popular in the media than as a rapper. But it's very good. Why is that not what I'm hearing every day? Why am I hearing a million and one like copies of pop? So what do you think it would take to do that kind of thing and bring it up to be as popular as anything else? I don't know as well if you've heard of Tom McDonald. He looks a bit ridiculous, but
yeah, I know. I've heard of him.
I love Tom. I think he's really good, but his image, doesn't work. Yeah. So sorry, I've interrupted you there, but go
on. Well, I don't. Okay, I think what you're describing is how can I take that to the mainstream? I don't think that will ever be taken to the mainstream because, like, labels want people that rap about drugs, and labels want music that dumbs down the audience, right? That's just how it is, and at the end of the day, I don't want anything to do with them. So like,
yeah,
any music that I'm not worried about like not making music to be mainstream. I don't want to be mainstream. I just want to like use any platform that I gain to spread what I believe. And if people fuck with it, they fuck with it. If they don't, they don't. Like also like music and other forms of art is just like a way of me. It's like therapy. So whatever I'm saying, like for example, the song that I recently released, maybe in 3 years, I might have a completely different like outlook on everything I'm talking about. But like that's me as a person growing. So any music, anything that I come out with musically, like it should be taken for what it is at that moment, and not like not taken too seriously, but also like listen to it.
Yeah, definitely. So, anyways, I've hogged a lot of the questions here, and I'm sure you'll know to come.
Okay, from protests.
Sorry?
So this shit that's been happening now with the whole protest situation, the bill that's been recently passed. Yeah, what are your thoughts about that? Because I know you have some thoughts on.
I mean, it's a disgrace. Like, how are we supposed to be in a democracy, which to begin with is a complete illusion? Like, let's face it. But how are we, You know, how are they going to continue this charade of democracy and then take away our right to protest? It makes no sense. But nothing seems to make any sense with the people that run this world.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
it's hard. That's why you sort of question.
I mean, I don't. I'm honestly, like, the best way to describe it is lost for words. I don't know what to think, because I wish that I could be in the UK right now, because I want to be out there protesting. I want to be out there trying to use myself to make whatever small little change I can. Because it's just a disgrace. Like, I'm lost for words, honestly.
Yeah, so I think it's hard to orientate myself in a discussion, because if you take unions, whether that's like teaching unions, mining, basically large kind of workforces, they have unions so that if there is something that's unjust against them, the working conditions, whatever it might be, pensions, whatever it might be, they can effectively protest by like very much legally, very much down to the line what they're entitled to, whether that's essentially typically is like not working, I suppose, and then that's kind of clear cut. With protesting, it's hard to say what protesting actually is, right? Because protesting can be rap, protesting can be gluing your hand to a train in rebellion, which, by the way, was the most
That was so fucking
sadly disrupts a transport system that is better than most other transport systems, to say reducing carbon emissions. Anyway, they aren't all organized. Yeah, so it can be, and there's a number of things. It can be violent, peaceful, and because protest is such an umbrella term, it's hard to say whether, because obviously, yeah, you have to, as a state, police how riots are done. For example, obviously you can never make it legal to like loot, for example, right? Obviously there's some form of genuine voice for the other policies. So like for me, it's like, where do we draw the line? Obviously there's this issue now with COVID whereby that's suggesting like even a peaceful protest more contentious. So what part of the bill or this conversation, guys, have they gone over that line where you stand? Where would you go up to from nothing to in that? If that.
Louis, do you want to go? Because I feel like I've been talking there. I'm not gonna lie.
Your fucking interview.
Okay, long speech, but I wanted to.
I mean, I think that, look, there's obviously multiple forms of protest, but I think that the main form of protest that this bill is addressing, and I'm like, if I'm wrong, please correct me, is physically being in a space, and that's occupying a public space, really, and like a mass population, organized population. And taking that away, I feel like that's one of the most common methods of protest, and well-renowned. And I think taking that away, and also most powerful, I think taking that away shows taking away that right from us shows a clear attempt to become more authoritarian. And I think a lot of the policies that our government is starting to and continues to put on us, it's going towards that direction. And this is just another reminder of like, shit, this is what's like, guys, wake up, you know. And to me, it's the final straw. Like, to me, if they do this, like, then I don't know. I start to question everything. I start to question, like, who am I? Do I have any rights? Like, really, do I have any rights? Because I also think that you either have rights or you don't. You don't have one right. You don't have two rights. You don't have three. You either have them or you don't. And so in that sense, you know, I think that thought that I just like had, this whole thing brings that thought to the forefront of my mind. And it's quite scary, because if they're going to take away my right to object to anything they're doing, it's like, I'm just what am I? Am I even a human being?
Yeah. And Louise?
I agree with that. Like, they are just taking things a bit too far. Like, what they've just said was it the Commons yesterday that they want to extend the COVID like bill till October now, and like would never have expected this from the UK government, to be fair. Like, I was surprised. Like, I shouldn't have been surprised. Huh?
When you say COVID bill, do you mean distancing?
No, the one where they like can have control over the laws of COVID, like the one where they can just make up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay. That one. Yeah, which they were meant to end in like May, June.
Oh wow! I thought there was like a minimum period that they have to.
No, but I mean, exactly. They keep saying it's going to be till then, and they keep taking it over and over and over. And I think it's just a bit of a joke.
Yeah.
Because how can we trust what they say? We can't.
Yeah, it's hard. I guess technically your politicians are supposed to be a union, right? They're the person or the party that you voted for. But realistically, parties for the whole country to cover literally anything, and those aren't exactly your voice. So I mean, I guess it's hard. Like a union will be smaller. You might know the leader of it. You can have conversations. Protests will be the same. You can actually feed your influence into them. But I still don't know how to make them sustainable, if that makes sense. Because we're speaking about space, right? So obviously, I would agree with you. You can't, especially take COVID out of the equation. You can't say people can't collect in Hyde Park in tens of thousands, whatever it is, and have megaphones and speak their voice. That's disruptive in a way to like polite society, but it's not killing anyone. So of course you need to have that. But I guess if that doesn't work, these things escalate. Ultimately, protests have to be disruptive to be forced to, because they essentially force voices to be heard, right? Because there are avenues that aren't working. So a protest is like, no, we need to do something extra. So by definition, they're always going to be on the line, if not past sense. But obviously, the prerogative of the government is always going to have to set lines, as I say, somewhere between the legal route and riots. And I just don't know how they balance that, but also keep people happy. Because what is a legal protest? You see what I mean? Like I can see what a peaceful, but what is like a fully legal protest? Like have you guys seen that Netflix documentary of all those American activist groups? I think it was in is it like to Vietnam War, against the Vietnam War or something?
Oh my God, was it the Sacha Baron Cohen one?
Yeah. So like Black Panthers were there, and like how many other groups?
Yeah.
They all knew like they could get a permit, I think, to be a certain area of grass, but they all knew they were all collecting their different ideals, and so it was going to be like dangerous or whatever, and all that sort of stuff. And I guess there's so many things go into movements like that. I don't know what like government or law would look like to facilitate that to not stifle it, but facilitate it without giving it free rein to go.
Okay, well, the police is a it's a government body, and their job in theory is to serve the people, right? So if the people want to protest against something, and the police, okay, firstly, if I'm the police and the people want to protest and there's a mass gathering, and the only reason police should be there is for an extra sense of safety, not to the state, but to the people that are protesting.
Okay.
To me, the job of the police at a protest is to ensure the safety of the people protesting. Okay? Whereas a lot of the times, the narrative and the approach is more of to protect the whatever is being protested against, or like the building with that, say there's a protest next to a government building. It's to protect the building.
Yeah.
And that alone shows a clear gap and a clear divide between we're the police and we're against you. Like it creates that kind of narrative in people's minds. And it's also a case-by-case thing, because a lot of the time protests are very peaceful until police come, and like that's not a coincidence. So it's a tough question, how do we make it sort of riots? But I mean, it takes two to riot, and there's no riots without police.
Oh, well, or looting, but I like where you framed that. The police work for the people, not for the institution. It's like almost if everybody had their every protester had a personal bodyguard with them, keep them safe, as opposed to their security. They're not security for that thing. They're the protection. Yeah. I've not explained it as well as you have, but I understand what you're saying, and I like that. Yeah, go on, Louise, sorry.
I've lost my train of thought now, haven't I?
Okay.
What's it? No. They do. It's not like they don't give a warning. It's not like they're not posting over social media. By the way, we're protesting in this exact place for this amount of time. This is what we're gonna do. We've laid it all out for you. It's not like it's just around. Like, these protests are organized. I get that some of them aren't, and some of them are just on the back of other protests. But the majority of them, like, they've maybe there should just be a rule. You've got to warn us before you do your specific protest. Yeah, but
that's why I gave the example of that documentary. So the protest organizers have permits. They like actual meetings with the government.
The government, yeah.
Well, they have there is a formal protest behind most big protests, but realistically, the organizers, or maybe not even the organizers, there is always ones that go really big. There is always that knows that
like mob.
Else. So it rarely is just one or the other. Do you know what I mean? Whether the organizers always know this other side is what the other side is gonna do is different. Like with the Black Lives Matters, Black Lives Matters protests. Again, I'm sure there was organized protests where they had permits to be in certain spaces. COVID, they like coordinated things, and then I'm sure there were like people that spread it maybe on social media, said they were gonna come and fuck shit up basically, and that was the extent of their planning. Like, but it's hard to the day when everyone's intertwined. So maybe you have like protest badges, and it's like if you're part of the original approved protest, have a badge, and if not, then you don't get to come in. I don't know. But yeah, no, it's interesting for sure.
Yeah. Well, the government these days.
Yeah, well, you're going to be part of the government soon, so.
I actually am.
Yeah, well, best way to change it is from inside, I guess.
Yeah.
We've just spent the last 20 minutes talking, like, slating the government off, and you're about to join them.
Yeah. Guys, I love you. Please.
That's very typical of most young politicians, though. They all start off as, like, disruptive, whatever, young, spirited people, and then, yeah, I guess there's little range. Either those people get cycled out or they change. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like that's another thing. Like, obviously, like I've said before, I'm very passionate about positive change. And while I was doing my politics and economics degree, it didn't take long for me to realize what kind of person, like, I feel like in every occupation, a certain type of person is needed. Or like that can stem to like companies, for example, like the company culture and stuff like that. Like the occupation of a politician has a certain culture that to me was, not something I want to be a part of. And I feel like you have to fit into that culture and that way of thinking, because I don't see a politician as a good person, like, to be honest. And like, not saying Louise isn't a good person, obviously, but like a lot of the politicians that come up, it gets to the point where in order to be successful in that not industry, in that field, like you have to have a high level of self-interest, and you have to lobby, and that involves being manipulative and these other things that it's not something that would make me feel like I'm a good person. So for me, like politics, I love politics and love talking about it, but being a politician is far off what I want to be, for example. Yeah,
I think there can be some component of like an art of war to it. So for example, you do things that are underhanded and are cutthroat, X, Y, and Z, but ultimately you don't think there are any that keep a core value, and then work the game within and always have that as something that will come through, or you think it's essentially impossible to embed yourself? Are we saying like a PM at that point in time, you have to have compromised enough things that you would see to be moral values that You see what I mean? Like, you're saying it's entirely incompatible, basically, to be in an office and be moral. Or do you think it's likely that the kind of person that would thrive would be like that?
I think that if you want to be a politician, just like, you know, an MP in your local area that strives for local change, then like that's fine. You can, you know, it's very likely that you can just keep your traditional views or whatever you believe in. But if you want to be really successful in politics and you want to be the prime minister, you want to, you know, reach as high in the hierarchy as you can possibly get, then like there's a level of evil that is bred within everything, I believe. And you know, because at the end of the day, the way it works is the people in politics in general, it's about lobbying power, and companies have more lobbying power than some governments even nowadays. And so like if you can sell your soul to these people, then you will be rewarded. You know, it's like I can't name it off the top of my head, but you know, there's a lot of political donators to the Tory party that, you know, they push their agenda, and they help push their agenda by backing it financially. And in return, when the Conservatives remain in power, they implement policy that benefits these businesses. And that's just like, to me, the way that politics works currently is that politics and corruption is almost synonymous at this point. And that's why, like, personally, I would rather be, like, if you're going to label it, someone who's like an activist than a politician, because like I actually care about changing, doing these right things instead of like putting up a mask and a facade just for my own gain. And like at the end of the day, that's to be like high in politics and to get far in politics, like that's what you got to do, at least in my view. If you like, if someone has a different view, then that's fine with me. But
I suppose that's why Trump was supposed to be the ultimate disruption step, because he could, in a sense, rely a lot less on funding, lobbying, so that he where his values are. He just how his to also be specifically self-serving, and he also had from his own system people that he wanted to help out, whatever, rather than, you know. So if you're Obama, for example, he used lobbying, and it was said that, you know, obviously a lot of his actions, you know, were held by the same most politicians, and kind of had to adhere to that in his office. Whereas Trump maybe didn't have to do that as much, but then had his own agendas. So it wasn't perfectly the way. But what I was going to ask is, and I know again I've spoken a lot, and I'd obviously like to Louise. Do you think though it's a necessary evil? Because, so for example, lawyers, a lot of people see corporate lawyers, or not even corporate lawyers, lawyers of murderers, as immoral, because, you know, a lot of the time they know at least some of the crime they've done, or it's likely to have done their crimes, whether it's paedophilia or murder or whatever. But to have them have a proper judicial system from top to bottom, you need to have a court of law for all situations, and so they're necessary. So in that same sense, do you think it's something that you don't like? It doesn't sit right with you personally in terms of that dynamic, but do you think it's necessary because you need to have a governing system, or whatever, like to see you compete is unnecessary, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think it depends. I think that in like in law, for example, there can be situations in which, you know, the lawyer who's defending say like we have a case where the guy's clearly, you know, murdered someone. The lawyer, like, as much as he will have his intuition and understanding that this person is guilty, at the end of the day, he actually also, by defending him in the way our law system works, he actually is doing justice, because without him, there could be a mistrial or things like that. So he kind of speeds the process of that person being sentenced. So in that scenario, I don't see that. I understand why people might see it as immoral, but the way like the system works, it's kind of not. But in terms of politics, like, how are these, you know, this level of evil? It's not. It's evil because it's so self-interested to the point where it's continuing the benefit and the increase and the divide between the 1% of people and the 99% of people. And to me, that's evil. I walk down the street and I see a homeless man. It breaks my heart to look in his eyes. Right? These people have the level of savagery to just separate themselves even further from the masses for their own gain. And I think that, like, you know, it takes a real evil person to do that and be able to sleep at night.
That, I feel like that was part of my point. I haven't said it yet, obviously, but about like about like smaller communities and like tribalism, sort of like you're not gonna have a leader who has a love for the whole of the community, which is like what? How many people live in the UK? 66 million or something crazy like that.
Yeah, 70 million.
Huh?
I think 70 million or something.
Yeah, like we need to have small communities where leaders actually care about the people that they're governing. Otherwise, it's just actually never going to work.
MPs, surely.
Yeah, but still, like they're still serving like the Conservative Party. At the end of the day, you have literal like it's people's jobs, like whips jobs, to get all the MPs in line to serve one person, Boris Johnson at the moment, but like the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Or the cabinet.
While this would be your thing of expertise, Louise, I guess this then takes us into like political science and theory. What do you replace it? I mean, obviously you guys can discuss that. You both have a politics background, but you know.
Yeah, I don't know. Like just have smaller communities. Like
I think that.
like, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Like the whole construct of nations is actually quite weird. Like having these massive countries with one person who leads like loads of people to the. But,
So,
like,
how do you facilitate globalization without nations?
Haven't quite figured that out yet. It's difficult. It's difficult why we live in the world that we live in right now. Because change is really hard. But yeah, Jay.
Yeah, I think that like what kind of, you know, collaborating with your idea, like and what you were saying, is just decentralizing that power with like smaller communities. So, you know, if we can find a way to decentralize the power, it doesn't mean that, you know, there's one body that we all serve. It means that there's a multiple, like, you know, the power is literally spread. And that gives, if we decentralize the power in that way, it gives each person more of a voice, because, you know, technically we have a voice because we can vote, right? But the likelihood of your voice being heard is so small that it basically means you don't have a voice. And if we can find a way to decentralize the power amongst a bunch of communities, it means that like everyone in the process in order of getting your voice heard is going to be a lot easier. Yeah.
This is going to sound quite cynical. I don't mean it to be, but what you could argue that everybody having a voice, especially on things, has its downfalls. I mean, take Brexit, right? We went from everybody loves democracy to you need to have a qualification to vote for anything, and they didn't read up enough, and they're stupid, and they're selfish. And I think people realise, unfortunately, people are fallible to social psychology. People can be marketed to regardless of what institutions actually exist. People have their own personal things. I want to be able to go on holiday, so that's why I'm going to vote for all these things that have connotations of like how much we fish our oceans. Like I'm not saying that. I completely understand. I'm completely democratic in that if you pay your taxes, you feel you pay the system, you should get your say for your system, and that's represent you in some degree. I agree. However, the more agency and power, you know, even local governments, it doesn't quite scale to global issues of what the whole nation does in terms of sustainable energy. What our nuclear deterrents are, what you know, tax systems are for, you know, all big things which make the biggest difference nationally and globally. So I think that's kind of why we do have this balance of local government and big government. And I would almost think that maybe the opposite could do it. You know, if we had like more of a UN, the only overarching thing, and then we had
countries or counties or whatever acting within that. Obviously, that would be quite scary, because if if that went wrong, you'd have like a global dictatorship. But
Yeah, literally. Fuck.
I just think there are so many global issues that are so intertwined because of the way we live now. I don't know if we can operate in any other way that isn't becoming more and more global. You know, having Elon Musk's of the world and Jeff of the world donating. Luckily, you have people like them who can put 20 billion combined into space and renewable energy, but that's the kind of money needed to make real change. And I don't know if we can organize in such small systems unless you have, philanthropic billionaires.
There's I've just been reminded of something I was talking about with my friend the other day, and like I sort of had this like realization, I guess, that like I feel like the way we're going and the way to progress is like we live in a capitalist society, and that means that the markets and everything you're talking about react to us. So our true power isn't in politics; it's in how we consume. So if we can encourage and promote different ways of consumption and help people understand that them as a consumer, that's where their power lies, then that's your voice. That's when change can start to happen. So, for example, we're getting, due to capitalism as well, we're getting these businessmen and these billionaires that literally have the same amount of money of governments, if not more, and a lot of lobbying power. And if we, as consumers, show that our needs are, environmental protection and anything to do with these global issues, then they should react in that way, because at the end of the day, like I said, we're the consumers and they react to our needs.
I think that's entirely correct, but I also think Sue from down the road doesn't really care about about the Paris Agreement. I think she just wants to be able to have as long as she doesn't want to pay 5p for bags. And I always say like a Sue from down the road, this isn't like a specific. I think we think of these the government. I think we give too much credit to people. I think people are inherently selfish, and yes, the government are lobbied by individuals and that has an effect. But I think down to the ground level, most people are worse than any government official. Power corrupt. Was it power corrupt? Totally. Total power corrupt. Totally. Whatever they.
Absolute power corrupt. Absolutely. That's it.
Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, sorry, Louise, you take a piece on that because I've been.
I am going to agree with you when you say that people are inherently selfish. Like, I do absolutely agree with that, and I also think not enough people care about the political system that we live in to like make these sort of changes. Like, people are very self-absorbed. They want to live their own world, especially with phones and stuff now, just controlling everyone's lives. And like all these platforms. No offense to Instagram, don't come for me, but yeah, I do. It's a massive issue. Like, how do you get people to care? Like,
I do.
Education? I don't know.
I do agree that like less people are care about these things, but I also think that comparatively to other generations, like there's a higher proportion of younger people that are getting into these ideas and into politics and into how the world really operates. And I think that anyone that cares passionately about these things that we're talking about needs to continue to educate the people younger than us so that they can continue that cycle and that more people can care. And then also like coinciding with that is kind of the rise of like consciousness, and more people nowadays are connecting to their spirituality, learning about the brain in like detailed ways and having that education will make for a nicer and kinder population that cares about these things. So the more we can promote these things, the more that that these kind of values can flow through into like how people act in terms of them as a consumer and the decisions they make. So for example, 3 years ago, 3 years ago, I had a friend, and she's a vegan, right? And I have no problem with her being a vegan at the time. I don't have a problem in general, but me being younger, it would be like make fun of her because she's a vegan or whatever, and just overlook it completely. Whereas now, I actually have I'm questioning, should I do that, because these choices are better for the world, and that education is enlightened me in a way to make those decisions. And I don't believe that I'm special. I believe that everyone, if you give that information to most people, they will over time most probably come to these conclusions themselves.
It's funny you say that, actually. One of my friends made fun of every day. I'm now doing from today 6 days a week, trying to do vegetarian, vegan kind of thing. So I really get that. What I would say is, and you might think I'm asking you for no reason, you are special, because we have to not forget, not everybody's intelligent in every single way, right? There's music intelligence, there's emotional intelligence, there's so on and so forth. You are special. You be in the top style of intelligence. You might not, because the spectrum of intelligence that's out there. That's certainly what I find. You may not place yourself near the top because the Elon Musks of the world and so on and so forth. And you may see yourself fairly average when compared to, the tops of those things. But it's not just that the education is massive in that, and that even correlates to IQ more than finance has said in the past. But I do think there is that's before even touching on how that can be corrupted by motivations and other psychology. So I don't know that many people have an openness score, for example, that allow them to shift from their own personal outgroup issue, veganism, being more pro-social because they understood the data or understood. I think we're giving too much credit to where it's not due necessarily. Not to say anyone, people shouldn't deserve that credit, but it's so much of a risk, I think, to put these micro decisions the hands of individuals like that. I mean, what do you think about that, Louise? Just to
yeah I just don't want to diss any, but I do live on a university campus. I do know a lot of people, and I think not many people are open to changing their minds. I feel it takes a lot. It has to take something for you to change your mind, and a lot of young people haven't gone through. Oh,
I'm agreeing.
Oh, okay. I thought you were. Yeah, a lot of young people haven't gone through those experiences to make them think, I need to change, or I need to be open to other people's opinions. A lot of people do just want to be in their ways. But I feel we have to end on a hopeful note because.
Well, we have to speak truth, but I mean, I think say the world is going to end.
Education, guys.
Getting better. Do you guys think it's getting better?
It's a tough question. That's a very tough question. I think that is I think it's a race. I think it's a race between better or worse, and I just have no idea. It's getting better, but it's also getting worse, and it's just I have no idea who's leading. I think that's the best way I could put it. But one thing I actually want to bring up, going to what we were saying before, and I've spoken to Louise in the past about this, and I know that you also have talked about this with her, and I think that when she was talking about having young people haven't gone through enough. For me, the things that changed my perspective were the experiences that I went through, the previous emotional hardships had led me on this path to thinking how I think now and all these things. I wasn't always this way inclined by any means, and I think, and I'm a huge believer that psilocybin was a big factor in this, because I personally have taken psilocybin through truffles.
Yeah.
And the whole experience, I would literally compare it to when you go through a breakup and you have you go through all the stages of grief and everything. It's the whole thing, the whole experience, and you learn from it, and you come out as a new person. Like a trip can sometimes be like that, but in 8 hours. So
yeah,
it's very intense, but it's very healing as well. And I think that these substances have like the potential to change the world in terms of changing people's perspectives from one that, you know, is so consumed in their little egoic life and their phones, to one where it's more like in tune with everything, like how I feel that everybody in this conversation is.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've literally shown studies on how those experiences can change your trait openness. It literally, you know, neurologically makes a difference, even in one trip, one period of time. But that doesn't necessarily make you more educated, more intelligent. It makes you more open. When you're open and more empathetic, empathetic. Yeah. Obviously, that leads to greater business. I mean, you have to look at the sort of Vietnam versus what the people were doing, LSD and things like that, to see that juxtaposition. So don't get me wrong, I agree with you. Just, people will be better empathizing. People will be more open to change. But I don't know if it will be the right change, and I don't know if that's. But I will agree with you.
Again?
And again,
Yeah.
I think people will be more open to change. Definitely, they're self more into the fact that with the oneness situation, you do the brain, like you were saying as well. That's all very much true. And that tends to be a pure thing because, yeah, obviously, empathy doesn't have to be marketed to you. You just be more empathetic and do that through your own social circles, and have to be a. But again, that's part of the battle. I just don't know if it's the whole thing on, because that's also very like chaotic. It's not very ordered, and you need order to. It's all very like goodwill, but necessarily
like direction.
Yeah, direction. Why you sometimes need just hard asses like make the dickhead decisions, and then you need people that are and best for everyone, and you need dickheads to work together to hopefully come to some realistic but good solution. I think. What were you gonna say, Louise?
No, I wasn't actually. No, I agree with everything you're saying. Like, I had nothing to come back to that really. But yeah. Like, what would the world be like if everyone was just like amazingly nice? There'd be nothing. Like, there'd be no.
But there'd be no violence.
Okay, but right. Say people are like, you know, I don't believe that like it just makes everyone like a hippie and we're all just like having love, like
a great time chilling.
Like, yeah, like true, like if you have self-love and self-respect and all these things that come with these things, that come with with what we're talking about, like you have more discussions like we're having now, because I respect you, you respect me, and that's it. Like we're gonna have our differences, we're gonna have our differences of opinion, but we respect each other, and that's the whole point. You know, most conversations, even like in mainstream politics, they're not even conversations. They're just like the battle of words. Who can win the argument? A discussion or an argument should never be won. And I think like if people become more open-minded and start doing these things, then like the whole perspective of everybody and then the world will change into a more positive one. Because right now our world and the way we're all responding to fear. That's the narrative that's pushed out there. Whereas like from my personal experience, I started to realize how that was being pushed on me, and like how I had to come from and I had to resonate in life from love and not fear, and push that kind of like vibration out as well into the world. And if everybody can be like that, it doesn't mean that we're all going to be holding hands and singing songs around a fire camp all the time, right? Yeah. But it means that we're going to be respectful of each other and empathetic towards each other, and show compassion. And when these things are shown, it solves a lot of problems because there's understanding. And the main, most problems stem from a lack of understanding or willing to understand another person's situation.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Definitely. Oh, I think that is a good place to end. So thank you for coming on the podcast.
It's been a pleasure. It's been really nice to meet you, by the way, Jeremy.
Yeah, and likewise. It was very interesting. I know I've spoken probably way more. I know Louise has spoken to you obviously a lot in the past.
Yeah.
I want to speak all those sort of stuff. I appreciate that opportunity. Yeah, we'll put links to Jay's music. Anything else you want to follow him on this? But yeah, it was very cool. Bye, guys.
Bye.